Six,
I'm
five,
having a huge
four,
argument.
3, 2, 1. And we are live. Welcome to episode 4 of Beyond the Pendulum. We're streaming today from sunny Los Angeles, back end on from Texas. If you are watching this, sorry for the delay. I did post on the Twitter channel that we would be streaming in like an hour, but we had some issues. I guess had some other plans. Once again, if you do recognize this voice, we have been on other podcasts before. This is a completely separate project, as I said before, focusing more on the other news that's not normally out there, paranormal, UFO, and UAPs. I don't want to get too much into my own experiences, and that'll probably go on in some other podcasts, probably when I'm more comfortable talking about it. But we do have a guest today. His name is Alex. Do you want to tell us your story and what happened and what you saw?
Sure. Yeah, my name's Alex. I own a small vet catering business in Northeast Ohio. 40 years old. Um, I have had a few experiences, but there's one that kind of stands out, and for time's sakes, I think it would be best just to zero in on that. And then the other ones are strange, but this one was definitely more intense. Um, to maybe set the scene, I suppose. The time frame, it was either 2007 or 2008, or sometime in between. I can't remember the exact year, but I know it was towards the end of summer of '07 or '08. Um, this event took place right on the Ohio Pennsylvania border. There is a road that goes it's between Youngstown and Pittsburgh. So at the time, I was living in Pittsburgh. I went to culinary school there, and I had an apartment there that I lived in for about 7 or 8 years. My family is from the Youngstown area, so I was back and forth rather frequently. And I was visiting my buddy Adam, and there's been two times I've been with him, and then something strange has happened. But I'm just gonna, like I said, zero in on the one thing that I had happened. Um, so there's a little town in Northeast Ohio called Lisbon, and that's where my buddy Adam was living at the time, and I was there visiting him, and we were just hanging out. He had a couple friends over for the night, and um, I don't remember why, but I didn't stay. Go ahead. Did
Oh,
somebody say something? I'm sorry.
it might have been reverb.
Oh, okay. No problem. I'll just continue. So, yeah, so just to set the scene, I was at my buddy Adam's house in a little town called Lisbon, Ohio. It's about a half hour due south of Youngstown, not too far from the Ohio PA border. So I was hanging out with him. Wasn't I had to work or something the next day, so I wasn't really drinking or anything, although there were people there who were doing that. So I was sober. I had to get home. I didn't want to get home too late, but it was nighttime. It was after 10 p.m. I know it was getting late. Um, so I kind of parted ways with him, got in my car. At the time, I was driving a gray Saab. It's like a 2004, and I started to make my way out of Lisbon towards a little town called Columbiana. Columbiana, there's a road. It's State Route 14, which will take you across the Ohio PA border. It merges into Route 51. Route 51 then merges into major like interstate or highway 376, which will get you the rest of the way to Pittsburgh. So my story kind of starts when I'm on Route 14. I'm exiting Columbiana, and between Columbiana and a town, Chippewa, Route 14 connects between Columbiana and Chippewa. And so the incident happened in between Columbiana and Chippewa. It's really rural out there. There's a bunch of cornfields. There's not much out there, but there's woods, there's cornfields. There just isn't a lot going on between Columbiana and Chippewa. Um, so I'll be bopping along, just kind of minding my own business. And it was weird because there was a weird thing that happened that I guess was unrelated, but it seemed like a storm was brewing up. Like the wind had started to kick up a bit, and there was a tree that had blown over across the road. And I didn't see it in time. I had crested a hill. I was probably going about 50 miles an hour. I think the speed limit's between 45 and 55 there. And I remember I ran right over it with my car, and it startled me. And I thought, oh God, that can't be good, because this trunk was at least a good 8 inches around or so, and I just ran right over it, and I kept going. And I thought, oh, that was weird. How strange. Little did I know things were going to get a whole lot stranger. So that was shocking enough, running over this tree that kind of blown down on the road. But as I'm going along, the road between Columbiana and Chippewa starts out as like a single lane road, and then it will split into a double lane once you get closer to Chippewa. So I'm on the single lane when I run over the tree, and the first thing that I notice is on my right hand side, about 100 yards away, in the middle of a cornfield, there is a very bright green flash that happens. So there was no sound, um, and there was a really bright, startling green flash to the point where I was blinded for a minute. I couldn't see. Like if you've ever had somebody, I'm 40, so back in the 80s and stuff, when people still had flashes on the camera, and you'd
Yeah.
get hit with the flash, and you're kind of temporarily blinded and disoriented. It's really similar to that because it blinded me. Um, and my initial thought was, oh, there's a transformer has blown, which I thought was weird because I was out in the middle of nowhere. But immediately after the blinding green flash, I immediately had tinnitus, severe tinnitus in my ears, this ringing. And all of a sudden, at the top of my head, a electrical sensation began, like a tingling, felt like static electricity. Like when I was a kid, I remember going to this science museum, and they had one of those Tesla coils there, and you could put your hand on it and it would make your hair stand up. You'd feel this weird static electricity on your head. Or if you've ever taken a balloon and you rub it against your hair and it makes the hair stand up, it was like that, but like times 100. So there was this electrical sensation that started at the top of my head, and it went down like I was being scanned or something. It then worked its way down to like my nose, neck, shoulders, through my body. And as this is happening, I am very confused, obviously. But it continues to work its way down through my waist and then down to my feet. And then it stopped. Um, Obviously, I'm extremely confused, but I just tell myself, I'm like, okay, this uh, transformer blue or something. I don't know what to make of it. I kind of I was scared because I didn't know what was going on, but it wasn't so bizarre that I was having a huge freak out or anything at that point. So I'm like, okay, whatever. I'm just gonna keep driving. I've run over a tree. Now I've got this weird flashing and this, electrical sensation going through my body. So as I'm driving along the road, a minute or two later, wasn't very long, off to my right hand side again, about 100 yards away, above a treetop now, because I think the original one happened over a cornfield, but now I was in like a forested area. And it happened again. So, all I can tell you is that there was a bright, very bright green flash. I was temporarily blinded again. And then the tinnitus immediately came back, and then I've got that electrical sensation that ran from the top of my head and went down through my body. It was like I was being scanned, as I think
Yeah.
back on it. Um, so at that point, when it happened again, I realized that, okay, this cannot be a transformer unless, there was two that blew simultaneously, or like one after the other, rather. And I realized something was off, like something was going on beyond, you know, a conventional explanation. And keep in mind, I should have prefaced this at the beginning of the story. When this was happening to me, I knew nothing about the paranormal or UFOs. I do now, okay?
Hmm.
Back then, I had zero interest. I could have, I didn't listen to I didn't listen to Coast or any of that stuff back then. I was completely clueless. So, what I originally thought after the second flash was that the Russians were somehow attacking us or something. That's what I thought.
Yeah.
I know that sounds ridiculous. You know what I mean? I know it's completely ridiculous. But the only thing I could think
It's
of
not
is that,
ridiculous. You are bred in everything to think that, but please continue.
yeah, right. Because you're kind of trying to work it out as the weirdness is happening. Like, what could it be? And you usually start with the most logical, a transformer blue, and then you kind of ramp it up. And that night, I never got to UFO. That only came later as a possibility. But so yeah, I thought, well, maybe it's some sort of military thing, like somebody's doing something weird, testing something. The Russians are doing. At that point, I called my buddy. I picked up the phone, and it was later, and I called him. And when he picked up, normally he's not, but he was rather annoyed with me. I don't know why, but I was like, "Hey, is there anything weird going on, like at your house?" And he's like, "No, what are you talking about?" I said, "Of course not." And I was trying to explain to him, I was like, "Yeah, because there's some weird flashing stuff going on around me. I don't know." And he just kind of blew me off. But had some comfort that my phone was at least working. I could get a hold of him. If I remember correctly, it was pre-smartphone, like the iPhone had just come out, but I still had like an old Nokia or something, or a Razor, it might have been. So I get off the phone with him, and this flash happens again. This happens to me again. At this point, it happens another two or maybe three more times. Okay. And at this point, I realize that something's following me.
Hmm.
Logically, it could have been one of two things. Either something's following me, this green orb thing, okay, or there's something already at the location when the flash happens, like multiple things that are flashing green. It's got to be one of those two. I don't know. Um, but like again, okay, that's right. Oh my goodness, I forgot about this. So this happens two or three more times, and it's just a green orb. It's flashing. I'm feeling static electricity, which is a really strange feeling, and I'm really scared at this point. And I remember thinking, okay, this is kind of like a main road, although it was out in the rural area. So as the last flashes are happening, I'm getting to that section of the road that splits, and now I'm in a double lane, which I'm happy about because I don't want to be alone anymore because this weird stuff's happening to me in the middle of the night, and I just wanted some cars around me or something. And this is important. As I'm approaching Chippewa, now what you need to know about Chippewa is it's the first town or populated place that you hit on your way to Pittsburgh from Ohio on Route 51 between Columbiana and Chippewa. So Chippewa has a 24-hour Walmart. Okay, right.
Mhm.
You drive right by it. It also has some all-night gas stations. I think it had one at the time, but they put a Sheets in later. That's an all-night or a Get-Go. Back then, though, I don't think that was there. But there was also a Giant Eagle and Home Depot right there. There's these car lots there, and it's always bustling. Like there's like never have I been in Chippewa and there hadn't been any cars around. Okay, never. Because I still drive through there. My client base is in the Pittsburgh and Cleveland areas for my catering business, so I still go that route. Sometimes when I'm doing an event in Pittsburgh. So I'm excited to be approaching Chippewa after all of this weird flashing and electricity and weirdness going on because I'm looking forward to not being alone. Okay, so I just want to pull over into a gas station or anything at that point. So as I approach Chippewa, the first thing I notice is that there's a few stoplights as you're coming in to Chippewa. Well, like I said earlier, it seemed like a storm was brewing up, and the wind was kicking up. It had knocked over that tree. Now, this is where it gets really strange. It's kind of subtle though. This is the thing about the story. It's like I didn't see any beings or there wasn't like some huge craft floating there. Nothing like that happened, but it's still weird. So when I approached Chippewa, I could see the stoplight up ahead. I'm like, oh, okay, good. It was blowing in the wind and it was out though. So the power to the stoplights were out. And some of the power in Chippewa was out, including the stoplights. Now, what really freaked me out is that as I'm approaching the stoplight, I'm frantically looking for other cars or anybody. Okay. As I get there, like to my horror, it's a ghost town, which is really, really weird because it's never that way, like never. So I'm driving through Chippewa and it's like I'm in a parallel universe because there's nobody anywhere. The stoplights are out, they're blowing in the wind. There's not a single car or person anywhere. And that freaked me out because I did not want to be alone. There's like weirdness going on. So that part of the story always freaked me out because I've driven through there many times in the middle of the night like after COVID, I don't think their Walmart is 24 hours anymore, but it used to be, and there was nobody there. And there was nobody, there was no cars, there was no pedestrians, nothing. And as you make your way through Chippewa, so at first on the left was the Walmart, so I passed that first. Then the car dealerships, no, the car dealerships are first, then the Walmart on the left. And then as you progress further on down, you'll hit the Home Depot, and then there's a Giant Eagle on the left-hand side. So I pass all them, there's nobody anywhere. And in Chippewa, as you're exiting Route 51, it connects to Route 376, which goes straight to Pittsburgh. So I pass through and all of that stuff, and I finally approach Route 376. And as I'm getting on the on-ramp, I am beyond relieved because it's like I exited this weird ghost town, and that's when I saw my first car, is when I got on 376 to go to Pittsburgh. And that's pretty much where the story ends. Yeah.
Also, I do have a question. Was there any like missing time during any of this, or?
I wanted to ask the same thing.
Yeah.
I can't say for sure. I
You didn't
wonder
recall.
about that.
Nah, see, this is the thing.
Oh.
Like, it's one of those things where if you don't recall it, you won't even know. It's one of the
Right.
like it's if you do not look at your watch, it'll be completely oblivious to you because it's only the look at the watch that alerts you to the fact that something doesn't make sense. So it's one of those things that if you ever have a sighting like that again, always keep track of the time, because you're going to need to know the time of when it happened. These things will be pivotal, but it may also lead to more information like missing time, which is why he asked. It's a perfectly normal question. So at
Yes,
this point, because you didn't look at your watch, we're going to have to sort of rule that out. But I was thinking, and from
Right.
another perspective, have you ever undertaken hypnotic regression?
No, I have not. I know that's a thing. I
would look into that and having the session recorded if possible, because you may be able to pull up more information through your subconscious via hypnotic regression than your memory can recall, because the human mind is very, very cunning at times. It will hide certain things that are stressful to you.
Yeah, that's very interesting. At the time, my car had these issues with the fuses on the dash.
Usually
so the
that will
clock
happen
wasn't
to
working.
get you. Usually that will get you to
Yeah.
stop in a specific place at a specific point at a specific time.
Yeah, that's the kind of common.
Messing.
Yeah, go
The
ahead.
messing with your electrical system will be a result of basically that happening. It's not unusual. That has been reported before.
Yeah, it was a strange evening, and interestingly enough, as so obviously after I started researching other people's experiences, once I figured out it might have been something like that, and when so in the UFO community, the static electricity thing, it's not talked about a lot, but as I've dug in, I have notes somewhere where I'm referencing people, or people I'm hearing them reference that, and I'm picking up that's a thing that people experience where they have this electrical charge or this feeling, and I've heard that in a few other experiencer stories, so I really resonated with that in particular. But you don't hear it. You hear missing time. You hear what else? The normal stuff that you in most UFO or paranormal experiences. Um, the ghost town thing, I've heard that a few times as well. Uh, in the paranormal, Whitley Strieber talked about having like a weird experience like that once, uh, which fascinated me.
Yeah, also the phenomenon of having issues with the fuses in the cars, that's atypical of either high intensity X-rays or some sort of other form of radiation, but it's typically common with what you would experience with electromagnetic pulse or it fries.
Electromagnetic interference of some
Yeah,
sort.
yeah.
Hey, so
Yeah.
I'm wondering, like, who was the first person you told about this, and like, and how long did you wait with this? Were you uh, like confused and not telling anyone about it? Like, how did that go? Can you tell me?
Yeah, I didn't I didn't talk to too many people. I over the years I will bring it up with some of my family members, and not so much to annoy them, but to kind of it hasn't been a best experience trying to tell people, especially if they're not in this world of UFOs and stuff. They just um it's just useless because it's just not believable to them. Until
I've
it
had a
happened.
similar
Yeah.
experience 10 years ago, but I was lucky enough to have a witness with me too.
Oh, really?
Yeah, yeah,
What 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 happened?
I was driving out in the Australian outback and along the Stewart Highway, and yeah, basically I was taking my girlfriend at the time, Vanessa, a girl from Canada, um, on a run through the Australian bush, basically. And on the way home, um, it was getting late, and it was 200 and something k's to get back to where I was, where we were staying. And there's nothing for miles. There's no power lines. There's no street lights. Like, it's just open bush. And there was a light that I thought was just a car behind us with high beam on. And it was just blaring constantly, you know what I mean? Like, to the point where it was blinding me. I had to actually uh, dip the rear vision mirror away so it didn't, shine the light straight in my face. And I was telling Vanessa, like, what's this guy's game? Like, what's his problem? Can't he turn his high beam off? Like, doesn't he realize he's like blinding everybody in front of him, sort of thing? And this just went on because it's a long drive. This just kept going for like an hour. And I thought, well, screw this. Like, I'm going to pull over. I'm going to wait for this guy to pass so he's not blinding me with his high beam. So
Right.
I pulled over and waited. Middle of the night, pitch black, and the light down the highway. There's only one road. And we're waiting. 10 minutes. Still high beam down the highway, shining. Waiting
Hmm.
20 minutes now. Still nothing. No noise, no nothing. All right, half an hour now. I'm thinking, this guy should have passed us by now. Still, same distance, same brightness, same light, just sitting there.
Hmm.
Then Vanessa started getting a bit freaked out. And she said, oh, I want to go. Like, I've got a really bad feeling. And I was like, okay, yeah, all right, let's go. So we got back in the car, the light's still there, and kept driving. And it followed us, like, constantly, kept the same distance, same brightness, still pissing me off. 10 kilometers out of town, you could see the lights from the town in the distance. And I said to Vanessa, I said, look, we're almost home. Looked back in the rear vision mirror, the light was gone.
That's
So
bizarre.
I have no idea what it was, where it came from, what its intentions were. I just wanted it to pass because I was still convinced it was a car. But after waiting for half an hour, I don't see why another car or a truck in the middle of the highway that's hardly anyone's on, because you don't drive at night because of the wildlife. Yeah, it was strange, the whole thing.
Yeah, that's what was it, a white light? or
Yes.
did it have? It was
No,
bright.
no, it was white. It was white, bright white.
And it seemed like a singular light,
Yep,
not
yep.
two.
No, no, singular light. Singular bright light. The
And
sort
did
of. It appeared like if you had a kilometer away, right, or a mile away, somebody turned on high beam on a truck. How it would appear as one light being so
yeah,
far away. That's how it appeared. That's why I was convinced it was a vehicle. That's why I stopped and waited for this vehicle to pass.
yeah, that's really strange. If it was a vehicle, it would have just passed you,
Precisely.
100%.
Precisely.
Uh,
Long time ago. Unless they parked when I parked and decided to sit there with their fucking headlights on.
which would be weirder than a UFO almost, you know.
Well, yeah, because I didn't sit there parked with my headlights on.
Yeah. Did you notice any? Did you missing time or anything like that, or no?
To be honest with you, at the time, because I was still convinced it was a vehicle, I didn't look.
Yeah.
But the whole journey did take us the entire day, and we ventured out into the painted desert, which is like in the middle of nowhere. Like we took a massive scenic route, taking all the back roads, dirt roads the whole way, you know what I mean? Like in the middle of fucking nowhere. If we would have been trapped or like broken down, we would have been fucked. The chances of somebody coming along those back roads were fucking slim to Buckley's. Would have been weeks, if not months, before we were found, because I had no communication and no reception out there either.
And what year was this? Do you remember?
This was 2010,
Okay. Gotcha.
the end of
Oh.
2009, 2010.
It wouldn't have been that long after mine. Well, that's absolutely fascinating.
Can I ask you a
Fascinating.
personal question?
Sure.
Are you vaccinated?
Nope.
Interesting. Thank you for that.
Also, Alex, after the sighting, did you notice any weird burns or nosebleeds after?
No. No,
Have
nothing
you
like that.
have you through your life experienced random nosebleeds for any reason?
Nope.
All right.
Nope. Never had that. No.
Uh,
Not not that I remember. Maybe I had one or something when I was a kid.
For no
Uh,
reason. It's got to be for no reason. I don't mean like punched. I mean like a
uh,
subtle flick and your nose bleeds.
no, I don't have any memory of something like that.
yeah.
I'm sure that I'd remember.
All right.
I've had, like I said, and I don't know. Now this is up to you guys and how long you want to go. Or I've had a couple other weird experiences too.
What I was going to
Just
ask you, was that your only
yeah.
experience?
No, no.
Hey, so I was wondering, Tyler, why did you ask it? Is that something that's more common with people with such sightings? That
Well, I'll talk about my case, but I've experienced stuff like that, and it's kind of common. After like an abduction experience, bruising on in between the septum. Usually, these things will show up as scar tissue in the septum. A lot of doctors kind of overlook it and think that they're using cocaine or whatever. But a lot of times, these people don't use drugs or whatever, and there's no reason for scarring in the septum.
okay?
Right.
I guess like for listeners, we probably have to also go like the whole like skeptical approach in the sense that can we rule out in some way that this is like government or military? I mean, is there a way to rule this out? Like what
No,
makes
I
it
would.
obvious?
Uh,
Sorry, go ahead.
yeah, it's okay. I would say you can't. roll that out. So I'd be pretty adamant that I could only guess at what it was, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it was, a UFO or some sort of, something like that. It could have been some type of government thing. That was my initial thought, that there was something weird like that happening. But I didn't see a craft or beings. It was just this green orb that was after reflecting back, I realized it was pacing the car on my right hand side. It had to have been,
Stick to what we
or
know.
whatever.
Stick to what we know. Don't get me wrong, I'm all for speculation and exploring ideas, most definitely. But
Hmm.
I think laying out what we do know and what we can ascertain from what we've seen is more important. I feel there's more weight in that than our speculation, because I think
Yeah.
once we lay down what we know, then we're much more prepared to speculate. That's all.
Yeah, I honestly, I have no idea what it was. I couldn't begin to tell you. I could only guess. But and if my guesses are probably wrong, who knows what it really was? I have
Well,
no idea.
this is one of the reasons why I didn't want to sort of use the term UFO or unidentified flying object. I wanted to describe it of what it looked like to me at the time. You know what I mean? Of what could I visually relate it to? And the simple thing I could relate it to is one of those huge Mack trucks with their high beam on at long distance.
Yeah. Okay. Well, if you can't identify it for certain, it will be a UFO. I mean, there's not a way of like describing it, right? Like,
I know, but can you understand why I
I know
choose
it's
not to use the word freely, if you know what I mean?
yeah, I
Because
know it was kind of like a lot of response.
it wasn't in the air. It was on, like, on the road. Is
Yeah, there's only a few phenomena I think that could mimic your experience, and it's kind of a long shot. And one would be ball lightning, but ball lightning doesn't really last that long.
Yeah,
And
yeah, because I expected that.
the only other thing that would give off a glow like that would be high intensity. What would it be? Like a transformer exploding,
Yeah, no power
or
lines
experiment,
nearby.
yeah, or what you would experience if you're playing
Yep,
around with something nuclear. But
no power lines nearby.
yeah,
That was the other thing.
Yeah. Yeah, and I have a map. Uh, I can always send you guys a picture of the map, right narrowed down to where it was happening. And you're more than welcome to take a look at that. But there's not much out there. Like I said,
Yeah,
it's
the
mostly
stretch of highway
Pendulum.
where I was, there was nothing other than the road and road signs. That's it.
Yeah.
Okay,
And
but
roadside reflectors.
if you have a map, then Alex, then uh, did you ever check if there were more sightings or whatever there by from people or anything
Yeah,
else?
I started looking through the UFO Reporting Center database for that time, and in that area, and I didn't find anything. I was hoping somebody else had seen it or experienced it, but if they did, they must not have reported it, because I did check that database. I think through. Although I don't know if I went all the way back to '07. I think I was checking from '08 to 2010 or something in that area. But I don't remember if I went all the way back to '07. As I was working it out recently, I'm realizing it may have been '07, not '08. I originally was thinking it was '08.
yeah, I have to admit that MUFON, as good as it is, I've emailed them several times. That they do need some improvement, but they're not. It's a volunteer based organization, and they're not exactly super detailed. And I've emailed them several times, like, why don't they put
I think
picture
it was Paul
evidence?
Norman.
Yeah, yeah,
Paul
picture
Norman
evidence.
used to be the head of the MUFON back when I contacted it in the 90s. when I was doing research. But it's changed since then. Different people have taken it over. Um, yeah, it's not what it used to be.
That's have you guys heard of the Chris Bledsoe case?
No.
Oh my goodness. You should give that a listen to. So he had a experience that would have been like the same year as mine, down in South Carolina, and they were not very happy with MUFON the way that they handled it. They had a real negative experience. But Chris Bledsoe is, and now probably one of the most famous experiencers, like up there with Travis Walton and I don't know, Betty and Barney Hill. He's he is
Betty
it
and
is
Barney Hill.
yeah, yeah, he's you should look into the Chris Bledsoe case. It's unbelievable. It's just unbelievable. He had an event in 2007 in South Carolina. Uh, it's where he saw these orbs, and there was missing time. There was multiple witnesses. They've been interviewed. So it was him, and he's a house builder, and he was celebrating finishing building a house. It was him and two other contractors and his 15-year-old son. And to celebrate, they went to the riverbanks to go fishing. And as it started to get dark, Chris Bledsoe went for a walk, and he saw these look like two setting suns, but the sun was in a different location. He saw these orbs, had missing time. After he saw them, he didn't realize that a few hours had passed because he had missing time, but the others were looking for him, including the sun. And yeah, I mean, they had, once they all got back together, there was more sightings. There was and they all piled in the truck because they were freaked out, and they hauled ass out of there, and they were seeing lights and uh, craft. Kind of, it just was pure insanity.
Travis Walken.
No, I'm talking about the Chris
Chris
Bledsoe
Bledsoe.
case.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah. Travis' story is fantastic too, but there's something about Chris's. Oh, that's the other thing with Chris is
Did you hear about the story of the USMP on a base? Him and his partner were patrolling a section of the base. I can't remember where. A bit sketchy on that particular detail. Easy enough to dig up. But anyway, apparently the Marines spotted some kind of craft that had landed, and as they approached, they said that some kind of metal tentacle had came out of the craft, slithered it along like a snake, wrapped around one of the MP's legs, and dragged him into the craft and took off.
Oh my God.
Oh my god.
He freaked out, got back into the Jeep, drove back and reported the incident, only to be subsequently charged for the guy's murder, and a missing person investigation was carried out. No one was, like, the body was never found.
Wow. Where did that take place?
I'm not too sure, but I found that story when I was looking at abductions and human mutilations, which there is a whole bunch of things that were interesting there. Some from the Vietnam War, and some fairly modern and recent events,
Yeah.
spanning the globe.
Wasn't there a Brazilian case that was pretty?
That was one that the retrieval team didn't get to in time, and an autopsy was carried out by the local authorities. And their autopsy, like the guy who carried out the autopsy, was pretty thorough. And if you read the autopsy report for that, you'll find that the guy was actually conscious while all of this was being done to him.
Jesus.
That's right. They could tell that.
That was the freaky part about all of this. But yeah, there's many other stories that just remain, obscure because they're. And it was once discovering these that I understood of why they don't release all of the information that they have.
Well, they definitely have more than they're telling us. Because I do have like a sighting myself, but it was obviously military, because this was in my own country, the Netherlands, right? And we were driving home. I was still with my ex I was living with, and we were driving home. It's like 200 miles away from her parents' home to my own home, and we were driving on this highway, right? And on the right side was this lake, and uh, we saw this also this giant orb, right? But it was not high up in the sky at all. It was like a giant yellow orb, but next to it were on both sides were these military helicopters, right? Apache helicopters. So
Whoa.
um, I think it was some kind of like super advanced drone kind of thing, but the way it was flying was really weird. It's like it used the way of I've never seen it before, like something fly like that. It was unnatural. So I know that they're doing this kind of stuff too in our country. The military is involved with this, and that's also like the first. That was one of the reasons why I was asking you about the military thing. Um, is it that they're building this themselves, that they're coming up with this, or are they like reverse engineering something that they found maybe? Or are they actually working with them? I don't know. Like that, I can't answer, but I do definitely know this was like military, or at least the military was accompanying it, and it was like above this lake. Um, I'm not sure if there was like a military base there either or something there, but I just know that we were driving on this highway, and everyone, like we were driving slower, everyone was suddenly driving slower, and they were all looking at it,
Wow.
and it was
That's
a lot of
incredible.
cars. I'm sorry.
No, that's incredible. And just to riff off of what you're saying about the military. So my ex-girlfriend has an uncle, okay? And I don't want to give any names out or anything, but he's in the military. And so the last thing that he could publicly say, I guess, was that his his job was uh, he had worked on the stealth, and he had done computer work on it. Okay, and that's what he could tell us. But you guys know as well as I do, the stealth is pretty old technology. But what I can tell you is that because the uncle was at some of the family get-togethers that we were at, and he has he's high ranking. He's got, like, when there's a picture in her grandparents' house, so her uncle, um, a picture of her uncle, I'm saying, and he's got the all of the, I don't know what they mean, but the buttons on the breast, there's like a shitload of them on them, and I don't know what the significance is. But when he goes to work, you can't get a hold of him. There's no cell phone. There's nothing. Like, his wife has to call a special number, and he's underground somewhere doing something. But um, at dinner one time, we were talking about the subject of UFOs came up, and he said he had piped up and said that it was his opinion that they were ours. And I always got the feeling that he knew something. I tell my ex that if I had to guess, he probably works on high-tech drone technology now, and probably, programming computers. But, oh, I forgot to mention, guess where he lives? Nevada.
Ah,
Where all the good stuff happens.
So there's
I was
that,
gonna guess Langley, but that works too.
Yeah. Yeah, so he just goes to work at some underground base in Nevada. It's no big deal, working on the stealth. So, but yeah, I always found that fascinating. He's an interesting character, that one.
I don't know. This is a personal story, but my grandfather, he was in the army, and he was toward the end was working for the Pentagon. And I remember I was like 8 or 9 years old, and I watched some like when sightings was going on, and he was already drunk, and I don't know if he was like screwing around with me or whatever. And does are aliens real? And he told me, yeah, they're real, and we have a couple crafts. And I just kind of like walked off because I didn't expect him to say that. You know?
Sure. Yeah, I bet you caught you off guard.
Yeah.
Yeah, that caught me off guard too.
Also, you said you had some more odd sightings that you've seen since that incident.
Um, well, there was a couple other things that have happened in my life. There's two in particular. Um, One happened before the green orb sighting. This would have been, oh, let me think what year, 2002 or three. At the time, I was going to Ohio State at the time, but my dad had gotten very sick with cancer, and I had moved back to help my mom take care of him. And this is just a weird thing that happened. And we were uh, at our house in Lisbon, Ohio, the house I grew up in. And I was taking a nap in the basement, and I'm falling asleep. It was like 5 p.m. The sun was still out. Well, I woke up. My eyes were open, but I had the sleep paralysis. Like I couldn't move. This had never really happened to me. Well, I think it had happened a few times as a kid, but I never saw anything. But this time I'm paralyzed, my eyes open, but I can't move my body. And I knew that I was awake because I could see the room. I wasn't dreaming. My eyes were awake. I could clearly see around the room. And there's a doorway that goes down deeper into the basement, and then there's a stairway that goes upstairs. And they're pretty close to each other. And out of the doorway that goes downstairs, at first what I thought was my brother in a hooded sweatshirt was this person, I guess is the only way to describe it. I thought it was my brother with his hood up with a sweatshirt, because I had an older brother at the time. I still do, but you know what I mean. And I thought, oh, it's my brother's name is Jason. I'm thinking, oh, that's just Jason. But as I focused in on it, and I'm still paralyzed, mind you, I realized pretty quickly it wasn't. And there was this dark cloak figure there, and where the face should have been, there was just black. And I was like one of those shadow people thing. Now back then there was no Google, nobody talked about shadow people. I didn't know what it was. It just scared the crap out of me, and I'm paralyzed now and stricken with fear because this thing I just realized is not my brother slowly walks, in front of me, and then it comes around behind me and is standing right behind me, and it puts its hand on my shoulder, and I jumped up. At that point, I think the pure adrenaline kicked in or something, but I jumped up and I ran upstairs, and I was swearing in front of my mother, which typically doesn't happen. So there was that. I was really worked up, and she was really confused, and so was I. So that was a weird incident that happened. So I saw one of those shadow being things. Never really saw one before or since that I can remember, but that one was a little bit freaky. Yeah.
Yeah, what you are describing has been actually. There's a few famous paintings from medieval times that depict such a phenomenon, even going back as far as then. There's a lot of myths and lore surrounding it, but I'm pretty sure we don't exactly know what is going on.
I don't know. I found out later. My roommate in culinary school, I told him about it and was beyond shocked when he had said that he had seen something similar himself, and we were both amazed that each other had like a similar experience. I wasn't expecting him to be like, I saw that too, but if you Google, once Google came along, and if, I started kind of Googling that stuff, and it's surprising how many people see the shadow beings or shadow people. Um, and you have to wonder, why is it that a large group of people around the world aren't seeing, like, I don't know, a 3 foot purpled four-toed monster or something, but
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
all these people see shadow people a lot, and then also a lot of people see, orbs or bright lights, but it's very specific. Once you realize that people are seeing the same thing, that uh, there has to be something to that. I would think.
Yeah, because I saw the same thing as a kid, having sleep paralysis like 3 or 4 times, and each time it was the exact same thing. Like well, I didn't actually see this figure, but I knew there was a shadow figure in my room, and I was still a kid. Um, I didn't actually like look at it specifically, but I just felt it was there, right? Um, and I just remember like my door was closed, and back then I still had like a window above my door, right? And the light was on in that window. So I tried to like scream, but no sound was coming out. Um, but I was completely paralyzed, and I did notice that shadowy figure. And like, I'm on the other side of the world from you guys, so yeah. Um, yeah, so we all see the same thing, I guess, and that's can't be explained, I think, because I was still a kid. I hadn't even seen anything like that in like a movie or something. I was watching like cartoons and stuff. So yeah,
Yeah.
Well, there are a few things that have been, in demonology that do describe it, but I think those are just best guesses at whatever they'll say like the what is it called, a incubus or something, or a succubus or something that visits you in your dreams. But I think the phenomenon might be more more something more out of the norm than just some pure guesses. And there's been a lot of research into real parapsychology and especially into demonology, but we
well,
don't, we're not really sure what these things
well,
are.
I can tell you something about that, like from medieval times. So there are literally like old buildings in our country, right? Because like Netherlands is a lot older than the United States, right? So from like medieval times, they also had these. They also saw these things, right? Incubus and succubus, and they said that that is where the story of the witches comes from, right? And they come through your window and stuff. Um, so they actually, the old buildings still have these metal hooks on the walls, and these people believe that these metal hooks would like catch the broomsticks, right? The brooms, when they would fly past your window, they would be stuck because of the metal hooks. So there are actually really metal hooks on like really old buildings here, and that yeah, because they did have those experiences back then too. And
Wow.
that's
So much so that they would be willing to put something up to try to deal with it. That's pretty interesting.
Yeah, yeah, because okay, so back then you had a lot of kids dying at birth and stuff, right? And the story of the incubus or succubus is, or actually also the story of Lilith, for example, that it takes your child when it gets born, for example, it dies, right? Which is like a demon from the night takes your a child when you're born. And they will believe that when these demons come to you at night, they will take your child when it gets born. A lot of kids would die when they were born back then because of the bad health care. So
Yeah.
they were taking it very serious back then.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I never heard that before, but that's interesting.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
this it goes back even further. You can go into when Persia was still a country. They believe that the stories even go back even further back to then, where they would bury these they called incantation bowls. You can find them. They're not like on exhibit, but if you look on Smithsonian and you look up incantation bowls, you know, they would bury these things to save their kids from being killed by demons in the night.
okay, well, but the weirdest thing is exactly what Alex also says. Like, why is everyone hallucinating the same thing? Or if it's a hallucination, why is everyone seeing the same thing? That doesn't make sense because I was a kid and like all the people see the same. I never saw any of that, like in any movie or something. So there's nothing like I could make up while dreaming or something. I didn't even know any of that existed.
Existed. Yeah, that's a good point. That's a real good point.
Like my childhood was perfect. I watched the cartoons and everything, and I was building like uh, these little huts in trees and stuff. Like I never thought of any of this, but still I hallucinate the same thing. I'm like, yeah, I'm saying hallucinate. I don't even sure what I'm saying. Yeah,
Witnessed, maybe. It would be a better word.
yeah.
Experience. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
The weird part about this is there's a guy named Doctor. God, he was a Japanese sleep research scientist, and they call the sleep paralysis. It's named after him, and he tries to explain away this phenomenon by there is a convergence between a psychotropic substance that does get released when you're sleeping and dreaming, and the subconscious mind interpreting it. But why would so many people experience the same thing? Because under the rules of like psychedelic drugs, it would be in conjunction to the users or the subconscious person being introduced with complex tryptamines. You can't. Not everybody can experience the same hallucinations. That's just too bizarre.
Yeah. Yeah, you think it would be specific to that person's subconscious. Like, so that could be, it could be anything, or that maybe your deepest fear, maybe one person's gonna see a spider or something. But yeah,
Hmm.
it's strange. If I may, I wanted to, before I forget, I wanted to mention one more thing about the Chris Bledsoe case that you guys might find interesting. So after um, he had met with MUFON, I think he met with them because he had waited for a while, and they came around 2009 or 10. Um, these people started showing up at his house, and the first guy was a NASA scientist, and they were very confused why a NASA scientist would show up. And if you listen to the Chris Bledsoe interviews, he talks about this. But another guy shows up who's very interesting. His name is Jim Sevivant. And I don't know if you've heard that name before, but he was high up in the CIA, and he ran the Weird Desk. If you listen to Grant Cameron's material, Grant Cameron talks about these CIA guys who were researching the stuff in the 80s, and they had this nickname, the Aviary, which they all had bird code names back then. So Grant Cameron was really involved with that. But also Kit Green is another doctor who's high up in the CIA, and I think he's been around Bledsoe. They approached him, and apparently, um, at one point, a lot of Chris's friends and family didn't believe him. And Jim, who's like one of the top guys at the CIA, called a meeting for Chris and said, "Invite all your friends and family to this meeting," and he did. And he stood and told them that this is real and that this is happening to people. And he did that kind of as a favor for Chris, I think, to gain his trust too. But apparently, you know, these CIA guys, they don't have control over this. They're going to the experiencers, because whatever this is that's happening, they don't have a handle on it. They're trying to figure it out like the rest of us.
Yeah, I'm starting to get to that point. The more I learn about this, the more I'm starting to think that, that maybe that's why the government isn't fully opening what they're saying is they know they're not even in control of this whole situation.
Yeah, that makes sense from multiple viewpoints, right? Because um, it doesn't have to be that they're scared or something of it, but if they don't fully grasp something and they open up about something, it could be that when a different country or different government does research it and finds out more about it than they do, it poses a threat to them, like from a military perspective. It's like you can
Yep.
only release it when you know everything about it, because if you release it before that and another country uses that information to do their own research, they will find out more than you do about it perhaps, and they look in a different direction. So that poses a threat, like for example, like Chinese or something.
Yeah, I think you're right there. They would have the motivation to keep quiet. They don't want anyone to have an edge over them. So
Hmm.
yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, without like thinking like maybe they're scared of it or they already know more than from that perspective, it's very logical that they would choose a direction like that.
Well,
And
you'd
more,
essentially have another space race because you already have people looking to extend that sort of resource consumption or what you want to call it beyond like the earth in terms of mining from resources. So once you come into contact with that kind of stuff, you can see how it would turn into that.
yeah, if you look at the world today, like imagine that they have like energy source that is like unlimited free energy or something, and what happens to the whole energy race right now? I mean, prices are going through the roof right now. Like you would change such things too. Like
Yeah, if you wonder what they've got hidden and tucked away in certain places, it does make
The
you wonder.
reason the reason things are so expensive is because we're all paying to fund Ukraine to fight Russia for the US.
yeah, well, I don't know
Yeah,
why.
yeah. I think that's funny. Yeah,
You know
that was a funny one.
that's not going to pay for itself, you know.
No.
All right. Now, if we want that fight to continue, right? I mean, stop. We need to send more weapons because that's the way to stop a fight is you send more weapons and more money and more drones and more missiles and stuff because that always stops a fight.
Or
Yeah,
creates
those
enemies
guys
for.
are.
Go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just gonna say that those guys are out of control because there's a whole industry and they don't make any money when no missiles are flying. So yeah,
Well, we
there's
need to stop this war. You know what I mean? So we need to send them more money and more bullets and more cannons and tanks and people and to help stop it, of course, because that's what the news says.
It would probably help if they would both have their own UFO sighting, like a serious one. Perhaps they would stop.
Do you guys remember that sighting over the US during just around the World War II where the entire seaboard opened up on it and just started shooting at it? They must have fired so many rounds that night and they hit nothing.
Yeah, that sighting happened where I live. It's down between the San Pedro and Catalina.
Yep.
That we that last
Imagine,
guest we had was had a sighting there, and I saw. No, I didn't even say this. I had a sighting a few days ago in the same area.
imagine if that thing parked off between two sites.
I didn't
During
catch
World
that.
War,
If it did what now?
Just parked between just in the conflict, you know what I mean? Who would shoot at it?
Probably both sides.
We
yeah, the
actually,
conflict would
I
suddenly
don't know
end.
if that would be a good idea, actually, because that means we'd have to send more ammunition, which would cost us more and cause the prices of everything to go up. I mean, you yourself in your little car or buzz box, even your V8, right, uses next to no fuel when compared to an M1A1 battle tank or a T80 battle tank. You know what I mean? Like, these are the gas guzzlers.
Airplanes, right? Military planes. Imagine how much they use, or these military ships.
I mean,
Incredible.
you want to talk about the environment, right? You could drive 10 V8s for the amount of bloody fuel and power that you use for running one tank.
Yeah. Okay, well, about World War II, there were many, many sightings, right? I mean, I even had a name for it, like these Foo Fighters. So,
Let's tie this into the black budget then. So there's a pretty clever woman. She used to be the HUD secretary, housing HUD secretary under Bush 1, I believe, and her name is Catherine Austin Fitz. And she talks about how they basically funnel money and dump it into black projects. And she's the one woman who's found some sort of paper trail, uh, according to her at least. But there's a lot of dollars that go into. This is why you get like invoices where like a hammer for the army costs $600 or something, is because the hammer doesn't really cost $600. They have to put that on the invoice. They'll take the $10 for the hammer or whatever, then they'll dump in the 590 into one of their black projects. So she talks about this, and she says it's just beyond absurd and disgusting that how much money is illegally funneled into these programs. And we all know that the CIA. You just saw it with the IRS with 75,000 new agents. Since 9/11, you've had 250,000 new counterintelligence agents added to, I think, the CIA and FBI and the DIA. All of that. It's bigger and bigger and bigger and bloated, and it's become this monstrosity that's kind of out of control and like devouring itself. And
It's over 20 trillion now that's missing from the budget. It was 2.1 trillion back on September the 9th and 8th when the budget analysts were going through the Pentagon records to find out where this money had got to. And then a mysterious plane hit the Pentagon and blew that place up, burning up all the records, making it really hard to find out where that money went to. But that's okay, because now we've got to find 20 trillion. So it should be easier to find 20 trillion than 2.1. I mean, considering there's more of it, you know what I mean?
okay.
Just how convenient.
Okay, I have one more question for you, Alex, and that is this ties into this. Like,
Yes.
so in the 1980s, for example, you had this movie Predator, right? They had this invisibility thing, and like this creature was walking through the jungle and had the ability to become invisible. And like in 2004, when they went into Iraq, which had to do with the Trade Center thing, they said that we saw invisibility suits being used by the U.S. military. There are all these little videos you can see them using those. Use like projection to project what is behind you, in front of you on your suit, right?
Okay.
Now, when the military can do this, they were maybe like 30 years ahead of like what we had, right? With the Lockheed Skunk Works and everything, like probably like 30 or 40 years ahead of us. Um, these UFOs can do similar things, right? So when we see these bright lights, it's clear that they want to be seen, right? What do you think?
Yeah. So, yes, I think um, uh, Grant Cameron talks about this, and I'm
You need a
kind of
magnetic field to bend light around an object. In physics, that's pretty much the only thing that does it. You need a strong enough magnetic field to stop the light from hitting the object, bending the light around the object. The only reason you see an object is because light is actually hitting the surface and it's absorbing the light. If you stop that light from hitting the surface and bend it around the object, you've rendered the object pretty much invisible because there's no
Yeah, but
light
that's a
hitting the
simpler
surface of
way.
the object.
There is a simpler way, Fanny man, and that is with the projection. Like they have this little suit, and I've seen
I've
how
seen
they
those. I've seen the rudimentary tests of that, but nothing really conclusive came out of it. And what I did see of the video of one of these suits crossing the path of a tank at one
Yeah,
point, yeah, that
that
was
was the
too
one. I remember.
that was too inconclusive at the time to be able to sort of ascertain anything, because video editing still existed around that time, and we couldn't really sort of it wasn't rock solid enough for us to be able to sort of conclusively say yes or no, you know what I mean? It could have just been a blur in the image, because from the footage that I saw, it wasn't the best footage.
Of course, of course. Okay, but it's not very hard to make. With the bending of light, that's a different story, but it's not very hard to make. You can have all these little cameras, and you have all these little screens on your suit.
No, I've
They can
seen
just
that. I've seen that.
It's not
And
difficult. I
yeah,
mean, you can make it if you have the money. I mean, it's not like rocket science at all. But what I was asking Alex is like clearly these UFOs want to be seen, right? And you were explaining something, Alex. I mean,
Oh no, that's okay. That's fascinating what you guys were saying. I was just saying that probably yes. It probably is some weird thing where like if I had to guess that they can't just come down and jump up and down, say we're here. It's almost like they just do enough to sprinkle in enough weirdness so that we are have to go, seek out the answers ourselves.
our
Because
biosphere is also full of microbes and bacteria and toxins and all sorts. We have to sort of keep that into consideration too.
yeah, it could be dangerous for them, sure, just to be walking around. Although there's no shortage of sightings where they're just like rummaging around in someone's yard or some weirdness like that, where they're out of the craft looking around. On cases where witnesses have reported such
Are we
things.
seeing
Like,
them in the suits? I mean, are we seeing them, or are we seeing them in their version of a spacesuit?
I've heard that I don't know, many times on Coast to Coast, a lot of times what these people are encountering are similar to what would be an android or something that was made in a test tube, and these beings aren't exactly aren't exactly alive like you and me. They're more like drones or something. I've heard that several times, but I don't know for sure.
okay, but this is a story that actually goes back like thousands of years into religion and stuff. It's probably too long for these 30 minutes we have left, Tyler. But
Oh, we
I,
got 5 minutes left.
yeah, so
Yeah.
if you're high up in the sky and you want to keep up this whole religious aspect of it, like you have the flying angels and everything, right? And when you go back into like history, you don't want to like you're subjecting a whole population, a whole planet into like to your presence, right? And there has to be a religious kind of thing too. Like thousands of years ago, they saw you as angels, right? They saw you as like messengers of gods, visitors from the sky and everything. That's like
uh,
probably something to
or, or
discuss.
or what if that somehow our collective consciousness is tied into it? So as we evolve, so does the phenomena with our collective consciousness, which would explain why maybe like back, in the old Wild Wild West times, they would see these like flying boats. They called them airships, and over time, like the phenomena, the way that it's witnessed, it's changed, but so have we. So there must be some sort of, I don't know, connection, if I had to guess, because people did see different things back through history that we don't see anymore. Like the airships, nobody sees an airship flying around anymore, but they did,
Hmm.
back in the day.
Yeah, in the times of like the Maya and everything, when they built their temples and their stories, it says like there were like flying dragons helping them, right? Um, and you have like, but you do have like the diaries of Columbus, Christopher Columbus, who said like he had like this orb coming out of the water and whatever. So that is like, what is it, five, six, almost 600 years ago, 550 years ago.
Christopher Columbus did also try and fuck a manatee because he thought it was a mermaid. Just wanted to drop that in there.
Oh, that's funny.
Hey,
I did
times.
not know that.
Strange things to me.
Come on, Chris. Jeez. Man.
I just can't hear Christopher Columbus without mentioning that. So,
I like the Flying Dragon story better.
well, me too, but
Oh man, that is funny. But yeah, before we run out of time, and so I have the chance, I just want to thank all of you for giving me the opportunity to share my story. And I could listen to you guys for hours. You were endlessly fascinating, and a cool group of people, and I'll definitely be following your podcast from now on. And I just yeah, wanted to extend my thanks, and it's been really fun and fascinating and interesting and intriguing and all of those things. So I just wanted to share that while I still have time.
Thank you. Oh, we have a few minutes left. Anybody with any last words? Oh, dead lose connection. You guys hear me?
No, we can hear you fine.
just dead air.
Oh yeah, no, I've been trying to get an exorcist on the air, but it seems a little more difficult than I thought. Everybody, there's a lot more phonies out there than anything. A lot of them want money or something, so I have to start rethinking some topic for our next show. I don't have any real plans. We might talk about the RAF photo leak that happened this week. That's with the Diamond UFO that we've been showing in the podcast, as you've been seeing. But we'll probably talk about that next week. Anybody else have any burning desires?
We haven't really gone into the Tartaria theories yet. That could be something.
I don't even know what that is, but we should probably talk about it.
That's a kind of worm styler. I mean,
Oh. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Now I know what you're talking about. Yeah. Yeah.
a
Yeah.
mud fluid thing, and that there are all these great buildings below ground, and there's like some huge civilization going on. And it's like a really kind of worm. It's like a huge,
It's a distraction.
could be. I mean, like, yeah, it's a good theory to have if you have a lot of fantasy to read about.
It's a distraction. If you understand history and not this rewritten shit that's showing up on the internet now, it all makes sense. It's not anything fabulous, but there is a lot of Photoshop going on. But yeah, it's
Well, of course. That's why we say Tartaria theories and not
Yeah.
Tartaria history or Tartaria facts.
some people are really, really grasping onto it, and they're missing the real hidden history, which is everything that happened during the industrialization of the world and the treatment of the slaves, the workers, which then birthed a new political system, two of them, socialism and communism, with the workers sticking together to fight the rich ruling class that was treating them, for lack of a better term, nothing more than slaves, and how much control they actually had over the population through government, and how much control they had over government during that time. That is the true hidden history. All of this other stuff is just a distraction.
Alex, what do you have to say?
Oh, I just listening. I pretty much said my piece, and I don't know. I haven't heard that theory.
They've fooled many into thinking the Civil War was to free African American slaves. No, it wasn't. Everyone was a slave at that point. If you weren't part of the rich ruling class that were the industrial moguls, and you weren't part of their law system, their policing system, their doctor system, their transport system, they're like, if you weren't employed by them or part of their military, you were a worker, you were a slave.
Okay, fine, man, but pretty much like
And
many
it
of
didn't
us,
matter what color you were.
many of us do believe that like at some point in time there was a great civilization on the planet, right?
Yeah.
Someone
Yeah,
built
no,
it all over the world, right?
The
So
Minoan civilization for its time, the Egyptian civilization for its time, There's been many great civilizations that have accomplished some amazing things and influenced everyone around them. I mean, there's one island where they're still discovering a civilization buried underneath it.
Oh yeah, next to
Under
Cuba.
45 to 30 feet of volcanic debris. The entire island is a volcano, but has a city that's buried underneath there that predates the Romans and the Greeks by 1,000 years, and is far advanced to anything that the Romans and the Greeks had, and is
Yeah.
connected to the Minoan civilization on Crete.
Yeah, okay. But if you look at the area like around Turkey, for example, in the deserts,
Yeah, yeah.
a lot of things are not being digged out. They're not digging into because they're saying we
Yeah.
can't preserve it. So they're keeping
Well,
it.
there's a city of Tetra that had an extremely advanced water catchment system built throughout the mountain that it's kind of built in. That was a major trading station for thousands of years, way before, normal civilization. I mean, there's heaps of little hidden gems all around the world. But yeah, it all fits into place. You know what I mean? It is pretty amazing. But this hidden Tartarian history that had hidden technology and I mean, there was a certain part where Europe meets Asia, which was considered the Tartarian area, and for a long time that remained unexplored and was a place of mystery and legend and so on and so forth. Because
Oh yeah, of course it's a theory, but like in every theory, uh, for it to make sense and for it to gain any followers, there is some truth in it, right? And they're using it to make this whole theory survive. Some very interesting things, and something I didn't know before, and I did confirm that they were right about it.
I'm more than
Well,
willing to hear it out. Don't get me wrong. I definitely find it interesting to listen.
Oh guys, I don't
Yeah.
mean to
Have you-
don't mean to cut you guys off, but running out of time.
I
Alrighty.
apologize.
Yeah, no problem. So how do we end it?
Oh yeah, so I don't have a video guy or music guy, so
Okay.
we will end this podcast right now. But we'll be back next week, Thursday, same time, 1 o'clock Pacific time, and with that, we'll roll out.